Why, hello there, and welcome to the Amanda Kaufman Show. I am your guest host, I guess, Rebecca Kaufman here, the other Kaufman, double the fun. And I'm so excited to talk to you guys about something that Amanda brought up to me this week. And I'm just like, you need to bring this to the pod immediately. So, without further ado, hey there, Amanda.
Hey there, Becca. I love that. Double the Kaufman, double the fun.
Like, when has that never not been true? You know, our family reunions are crazy. Let's go.
Let's go.
You brought up this concept in like random conversation with me, which is part of the reason why I'm on this podcast with you, is because we talk shop all the time. But you brought up this concept of a six-figure trap. And very few people, I think, would just innately be like, you know what's really terrible to be in? A six-figure trap. You know, you're making six figures, life should be pretty good, but I don't know. Tell me about this concept and like what kind of makes it prevalent for you in your business.
So good. I was actually out at lunch a couple of weeks ago with some entrepreneurial girlfriends. We get together like every couple of months for a lovely lunch of many different salads. And we were talking about this idea that just because you've hit a certain level of success doesn't mean that you suddenly feel relief. And in fact, the success of hitting six figures of revenue can feel like a trap. And so here's what we were talking about. It was basically you're making enough money that you are meaningfully more successful than most. You know, something like only 12% of small businesses ever make it to six figures. So it's a big deal. Like you're already getting an A plus in business. The other thing is that in order to maintain and sustain six figures, very often you're starting to get into this place where you can't do it all yourself. You when you're a solopreneur, you're doing all the sales, all the marketing, everything else, right? You have total control, which is amazing and also a bit overwhelming because now that you've got more contracts, more clients to keep up with. I definitely ran into this in my first year of business actually, is I was killing it. Okay? I had 16 premium private coaching clients and yes, I am bragging hard. And the other side of it was I had no time to get my next client. And so the real issue was that in order for me to have the capacity to be able to earn more, I would need to either outsource those activities, which I tried that and it was not great, or I need to let go of some of that revenue so that I can personally have the time to do what I needed to do to generate the next client. So the six figure trap is basically the fact that your business is doing well on paper, especially from a revenue standpoint, and you're feeling this pinch as the business owner because you can't really afford to hire A-level talent. You can't really pay yourself a whole lot more because you like just because your business is doing six figures does not mean that you personally are earning six figures, right? And to get out of that space, it is tough. It's really tough because what got you here isn't going to get you to that next level. And I think the other piece of the trap is that often we tell ourselves that we can get something for nothing or get something for very little. And what comes with those teeny tiny investments is often a lot of baggage and a lot of problems and a lot of extra. So that's the reason I call it a trap.
Okay, wow. So it sounds like it's like really a spot of the term that comes to mind is like growing pains almost, where like you have bootstrapped this thing and you have grown it to like your absolute personal capacity. But like what now?
That's it. That's it. And a lot of people at this level, they're sold a lot of ideas that sounds so good on paper. And then when you go to actually execute it, it's again, you find yourself stuck. So some examples might be you're getting sold on this automated webinar strategy. Sounds freaking great, because now you're not spending so much time chasing down sales and you're able to sell one to many. Like, let's just kick back and get neckties on the beach. And the thing that you find out is that, to catch the attention of somebody who wants to sit through an educational anything these days for any amount of time, it takes pretty considerable effort and testing to find the message. And here's the real rude part. Just because the message works one month does not mean that it's going to continue to work, because as we talked on a prior episode, marketing is this thing that you're constantly evolving. So I think we kind of get into this exhaustion trap of like, oh, I'm just so exhausted. I just want a solution. That's your tell, by the way. If you're saying like, I just want, and then you're about to make a purchasing decision, stop right now. For the love of your wallet, stop, because marketers know that you're tired, so they're selling you a lot of things that are meant to be like this panacea or this magic pill. And hey, you didn't fall for that for the first six figures. What the heck? Right. But the thing is we get tired, and then our decision making maybe gets a little wonky. And I think the other piece of this that makes it a really sticky trap is sunk cost. So sunk cost is the psychological bias that
Mhm.
because I've already done something, it's actually the reason that gamblers don't get up from the blackjack table, is because of the sunk cost. And so as a business owner, you don't want to disappoint your clients. You don't want to disappoint the team members that you've hired. You don't want to admit that it was kind of a crappy marketing idea. So you tend to hang on and stumble along with things that don't work. And what a lot of people do when they're in this trap is they try to solve it by adding more, right? So they add another sales team member, or they add another system, or they add another strategy. And it just makes you more tired. It depletes your calendar and your wallet, and your profit just starts screaming. So yeah, that's the six-figure trap.
Mhm. Well, and I'm curious for you because I mean, I've been in the space and I have my own observations, but there are so many things that are just like another strategy. It's like that silver bullet kind of solution, or at least it seems to be that way for someone who's in that position. Like whether it's a new marketing strategy, whether it's, a different way to acquire clients, like let's just be honest. Like, how many of these silver bullets do people tend to buy into before they realize that there's something deeper going on?
And that's a big question, because I really think that that's a very personal answer. I joke sometimes that I'm pretty smart, but you sometimes have to tell me a lot of times. And what I mean by that is like I know what it's like to try a thing and then explain away the reason that it didn't work, and then try something that's basically exactly the same thing and then explain away why that was a unique circumstance that didn't work, and so on and so forth. So I think it's kind of a tricky question, Rebecca, because for an entrepreneur to be really successful, you do have to be extraordinarily stubborn. And like, you have to decide that you're going to make this thing work, come heck or high water. And sometimes that very same tendency can be the thing that causes you to hang on to something that clearly is not working. And so that discernment piece, or that permission to have discernment, to allow yourself to quit the shit, right? And to let go of stuff that doesn't work, and have the faith that you're going to be okay, is really the thing. So, what timeline would somebody learn that on? I don't know. I think it really just kind of depends on a lot of factors, up to and including how stubborn your ass is.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, and part of the reason why I asked the question is that, like, it happens, that's just part of the experience of a lot of people's journey is that you throw some stuff up against the wall and you try and see what sticks, and you have a lot of faith in the people that are telling you that this is the way that it is, only to discover for yourself like, oh, because of XYZ thing, this isn't working for me. Like that's not a unique experience, and I think that people need to be okay with like, hey, I tried it, I gave it my all. And if you're going to like buy a solution and not work it, that's a different issue, but if you genuinely tried and it's just not working for you, I think that that's something that you can feel a lot of peace with letting go of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's also a difference between quitting and adjusting. So like there's the throw everything away, F this, throw up your hands, I'm not going to do this, quitting. Which sometimes that's appropriate, like that was me when it came to like the PTA and those kinds of things. I'm like, I am not that mom. I'm not that mom, right? I'm gonna let you be that mom. You be
Mhm.
that mom. I'm not gonna be in conflict with you over that. So like I did throw my hands up on being a PTA mom. Sorry. And I think there's another kind of quitting that is really, really important, which is the ability to pivot, right? It's the ability to say, like, hey, this is what I anticipated what was gonna happen. this is what really happened. Getting curious on what were the factors or the things that you didn't take into account that might have caused that difference in outcome. And Rebecca, like for real, in my first business, I was not willing to look at that until I did, right? And when I finally looked at, what were the causes that were potentially explaining this effect, and I got really brutally objective about it, I had to basically have this, it was like an ego death. Like it was very hard because I had poured almost a decade of my life into building a particular structure and to doing things a particular way. So to number 1, admit that it wasn't working. Number 2, do the analysis work to determine what were the fatal flaws with the model, what were the fatal flaws with the brand, the positioning, all of it, to just like be as objective as I possibly could. And by the way, I did work with mentors, I did work with coaches to just like help me to discern. And like, I'm so glad it happened. I never want to do it again like that. But I'm so glad that that realization finally occurred because I realized that I had really like twisted my identity into that business in an unhealthy way. So that was what was making it so hard to be objective about the traps that I was in. And you know what's wild is when I went to launch this business that I'm doing now, it's going fast. It's going so fast compared to the first one. And it's simply because I have a different set of skills than when I started the last business. And I'm already seeing the fruits of that labor of like learning to separate myself and learning to have a more objective review about what is standing in the way and what's keeping me stuck. Mhm.
Amazing. Okay. Well, and to kind of bring it back to this trap idea, we've laid out some of the pitfalls, like a lot of things that people do, like innately. So, if you were to talk to somebody who finds themselves in that position where they're super overextended, the things that they've tried to free up some of their time and still grow aren't working, like where to from here?
Man, yeah. I mean, it is a process. And so the first thing, I've been teaching for years this idea, and it's so funny how it's just the fun is always in the fundamentals. So here's the idea is when your hair is on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Right. So it's a reasonable thing to do. Right. So I think like if somebody finds themselves and they're identifying really heavily with this 6-figure trap of like, I'm working so hard to feel so broke and stuck and like I can't make moves. Stop. Right. Just stop emailing anybody, stop talking to anybody, just like stop the flywheel for a second, hit that big red emergency button because it is an emergency, right? And then drop everything you know onto the page. And I mean, get it out of your head. I think like Tony Robbins says that in your head, you're dead. And the more that I operate in business, the more I realize that is absolutely the truth. Like if you stay ruminating, which there's different kinds of thinking. Okay. So ruminating is when you take the same thought and it's like this spin cycle in the dryer. You know this, right? It drives you crazy, right? Because it's just spinning around and around and around. Another kind of thinking, you've probably heard of meditation. It's this ability to release and this ability to, tap into your spirituality and your energy. And there's so much value in that. And there's another kind of thinking, and I call this actually thinking, which is really sophisticated, but it's essentially like write the problem down, make it into a sentence, right? So, for example, talking to a business owner this week, I am not speaking to enough new people. Write it down, actual sentence, drop it onto the page, right? And you're going to want to drop like all the reasons that is a problem. Or all the reasons you believe that that is the problem. Because when you start listing out your reasons, you might find out you're being an emotional hot mess, and that's not actually the problem. Maybe there's a different issue that is more the thing that you're not really confronting. Because like I said, we get like our ego all twisted up into all this stuff. So drop it all onto the page. Also, like, what do you already know to do? So I talked to so many people in the 6-figure trap where they're like, yeah, I know I should hold my team member more accountable. Yeah, I know I should have some metrics. Like I think the thing that's so sticky about the trap is that you do have the seeds of truth that are going to set you free. You already know an answer. Your issue is that you're not thinking of the answer. You're not selecting an answer. And because you're not doing that, you're doomed to repeat the same cycles over and over and over again. And that's how we end up running around with our hair on fire is because we're not stopping. We're not dropping it onto the page. We're not getting real with ourselves. And we're not seeing what our true options really are. And I see this the most in the form of the habit of saying, I don't know, or I'm just so tired, or I'll do it later. Whatever habit you have to just like cut the thought off, this idea of stop, drop, and roll is like stop denying yourself that you actually do know quite a lot. You might benefit from the help of a mentor to discern what are the best options here. And some of the best coaching I got in the last couple of years, it really was improving the quality of my thinking. Because the better you are at thinking through a problem, the better you are at making a decision, the better you are at taking action because of that decision, and the more likely you are to achieve a result. Now, the roll part of stop, drop, and roll is once you've got it all on the page, at first it doesn't really matter if you have the whole thing blueprinted out. It's okay if you only know step one. And that's why I say roll with it. It's like, we've talked about metrics a lot, right? If you know you don't have any stinking metrics, make a dashboard, do it today, right? Just roll with it. You don't have to have everything all figured out. But here's what happens is you do that one thing you know is going to be important. And then you just suddenly get all this energy to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And before you know it, you're having a shower. The whole blueprint is just like a download and you know everything that needs to happen. But first we've got to get out of the chaos.
1000%. And I mean, I even use that like drop it on a page thing in like my personal life. Like if you're someone who ruminates about all kinds of stuff, like this applies to business, but this applies to everything. Like getting it just out of your head so you're not in that same cycle. The quicker you can get out of cyclical thinking, the quicker you're actually going to make progress at the end of the day.
That's it. That's it. I think a lot of people think they're thinking and they're really ruminating, which is just rehearsing the same thought. And if you've got a bad thought, like I'm going to fail or it's not going to work out or nobody wants my stuff or I'm never going to unlock this, you're right, right? Because you keep rehearsing that same thought. So if you want it to change, you've got to reckon with it. And I think that's one of the other reasons I'm still like so like 10 years later, really a big advocate for coaching because even this is going to sound horrible, but I mean, we're friends, but like even a low talent coach is going to help you break through for real, right? Because they know how to ask questions that are going to cause you to have a different reflection than you normally would. Now, I'm not advocating go hire a low talent coach. I'm just saying that like you really can't go wrong with hiring a coach.
1000%. Well, and for you, like having been someone who made it out of that six-figure trap, like what does the other side of that even look like for you? Like, are you experiencing more time freedom? Is it just that things have more clarity as how the things are working? Like, what does that even look like? And is it different for everyone?
Yes, yes, and yes. Yeah, it is different. It is different. I think like regardless of how much money, I call it the six-figure trap because it is pretty cool sounding. But you could be experiencing that trap at, five figures, four figures, two figures, seven figures, and nine figures, right? Like you could experience a similar version of the trap. And essentially what's happening is that you've architected something around you that ends up feeling like a cage and it ends up feeling like you don't have choices. And that's the whole problem. That's the whole issue. So you can actually solve the six-figure trap immediately without making another dollar. And the way that you do that is you own your shit. You own it. You're the one that built it. You built this house of cards. You're the one that made the decision about what to spend money on. You're the one that decided to have that brand that way. You're the one that set out the messaging that way. You're the one that set up the work hours. You're the one that set the processes. Like, I think the day that you really take the full accountability that where you are is your fault. You've sprung the trap.
Okay.
You're
Heard.
no longer trapped. It does not matter. Like you could have somebody come in and swipe what little money you have in your account because what happens is that your decision that you're going to own your mess means you get to own the cleanup, right? You can, like if it's easy, like as hard as it is for us to own our stuff, it's actually less difficult to own the cleanup when you can actually own it, right? And the thing I love about this is that it leads you to firing the wrong fit team member. It leads you to redrawing the org chart. It leads you to fixing the broken ass process, like whatever the thing is, right? Your freedom is on the other side of recognizing you already had it. You had it the whole time. The whole time. I decided about 3 months ago, I will not take meetings before 11 a.m. and I do not take meetings on Fridays. And for years, I told myself the story. I'm like, I'm trapped. I can't do this. Maybe 10. I can, like, ooh, not doing meetings on Fridays. And then I just did it. Like I owned it. And I had people push back. I had people be like, I can't meet at that hour. And I'm like, okay, well, how about this? And how about that? And I only offered options that fit my criteria. And if they're like, it's impossible to meet in those timelines, then I said, well, that's understandable. How about this? Why don't we see how you feel in a couple of weeks? And if you'd like to book some time, we can do it then. And here's the discernment is like when it's important enough to meet, people will meet, you know?
A
Like think
thousand
about the last
percent.
time you went to urgent care or an emergency room. You cleared your calendar and you did it. You just went because it was important. So you already have the freedom to change how you spend your money, change how you spend your time. You have the freedom to change. It's not a guarantee that what you change is going to work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, change it again.
1000%. 1000%. Well, guys, I hope you guys loved this episode. Is there any final thoughts or anything else you just have to share about this six-figure trap before we let everybody go?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to know is that although you are very successful, if you're at six figures and more, you are barely scratching the surface of your potential. And so instead of hanging on to who you were that did the thing, who are you becoming and how far can you go? And what is that person like? I think about that a lot. I'm like, who is she? Who's this future version of Amanda? What's she like? And then I'm doing my best to pull that into my decisions that I'm making today. And the thing is I'm not a six-figure business owner. In the future, I'm at least a multi seven-figure business owner. So then when I adjust my calendar, my priorities, and what I'm doing to reflect who I'm becoming, as opposed to hanging on to who I've been, that's really the goal, rather than measuring your identity and yourself by what your freaking bank account says.
100%. Okay. Well, guys, that is our episode. If this resonated with you, let us know in your reviews, leave a comment, like interact with this post somehow. If you have any questions or if you want to dive deeper into something Amanda said today, let us know that too. We love engaging with you guys and giving you exactly what you're looking for. So with that, we'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. And like, what is that 7, 8 figure person doing right now? Have a good one.